It was a Thursday evening when everything changed. I remember the dull thud of my heart echoing in my ears as I opened the door to our home. The scent of something familiar, something comforting, wafted through the air. It was the aroma of the chicken Alfredo that my wife, Mia, often cooked for our dinner. I had always loved that dish. It reminded me of simpler times, of laughter and warmth shared over candle-lit meals. Little did I know that those memories would soon feel like a distant echo, swallowed by a wave of betrayal. As I stepped into the living room, I noticed Mia's phone lying on the coffee table. It was buzzing relentlessly, the screen lighting up with notifications. I glanced at it, half-heartedly dismissing the impulse to check her messages. Trust was supposed to be an unbreakable bond between us. But in that moment, I felt an inexplicable tug, an urge that felt more like an instinct than a choice. I picked up her phone, my fingers trembling slightly. That was when I saw it, the name that twisted my stomach like a vice. Jake, our wedding caterer. I felt the air leave my lungs as I unlocked the phone and read the messages. They were flirty at first, but as I scrolled further, I could feel the ground slipping beneath my feet. The words transformed from innocent banter to something more sinister, something that made my skin crawl. My mind raced as I pieced together the fragments of our life together, the moments that now felt tainted. I dropped the phone onto the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the silence of the room. Confusion and anger battled within me, creating a storm of emotions that I could hardly contain. How could she do this? My mind flashed back to our wedding day, the vows, the promises, the way she looked at me with love in her eyes. I had believed in those moments more than anything else. I felt hot tears prick at the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Instead, I clenched my fists and paced the room. I thought of the life we had built together, the dreams we had shared, and how easily they had been shattered by a single act of betrayal. My heart was pounding, and I could feel the anger boiling over. Mia walked in just then, a bright smile adorning her face, oblivious to the tempest brewing within me. "Hey babe, dinner's almost ready," she chirped, but the joy in her voice felt like a cruel mockery. I could hardly look at her, the very sight of her made my stomach churn. "Mia," I said, my voice low and trembling, "we need to talk." Her smile faded and I could see a flicker of concern in her eyes. She took a step closer, but I held up my hand. "No, I know about Jake." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, suffocating and palpable. For a moment she stood still, her expression a mix of shock and denial. Then the panic set in. "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" I took a deep breath, feeling a strange combination of clarity and rage. "I read your messages. I know you've been seeing him." The color drained from her face and I could see the realization wash over her. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I had never seen her so vulnerable, and a part of me wanted to reach out and comfort her, but all I felt was an overwhelming urge to push her away. "How could you?" I demanded, my voice rising. "You were supposed to be my partner, my wife." Mia's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment I hesitated, but the pain was too fresh, too raw. I needed answers, not excuses. "Tell me why," I said, my voice breaking. I don't know," she stammered, her voice shaking. "It just happened. I never meant for it to go this far." The weight of her words crashed over me, and I felt the ground beneath me shift. I had trusted her with everything. The betrayal felt like a knife twisting in my gut, and I struggled to keep my composure. "Just happened," I echoed, incredulous. "You think that's an excuse? You think I'll just forget about this?" Mia fell silent, and I could see the guilt pooling in her eyes. It was suffocating, the tension in the room thickening with every breath we took. I felt lost, consumed by a whirlwind of emotions. Betrayal, anger, confusion. I knew then that life as I knew it was over. Love we had built was now a crumbling facade, and I was left standing in the ruins, unsure of what to do next. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but instead I felt a cold resolve begin to take shape within me. This wasn't just about her betrayal, it was about taking control of my life again. I took a step back, creating distance between us as the realization settled in. I had been wronged, and I would not let her walk away unscathed. The silence that followed my revelation felt like an eternity. Mia's eyes were wide, glistening with unshed tears, but I was beyond sympathy. The warmth that once filled our home had been replaced by an icy tension. I couldn't bear to look at her, not after what I had discovered. Instead, I focused on the wall behind her, the place where we had hung our wedding photo, a moment frozen in time, now tainted with betrayal. Is this how you repay our love? I finally managed, my voice low but steady. By sleeping with the caterer from our wedding, the one who was supposed to make our day special. Was it all just a joke? To you, Mia's lip quivered as she took a tentative step forward. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, she pleaded, her voice cracking. It was a mistake, a stupid, impulsive mistake. You have to believe me. Believe you? I scoffed, my heart racing with indignation. You expect me to just accept that? How many times did you think about me while you were with him? Did you even think about me at all? She flinched at the sharpness of my words, and for a moment I saw the flicker of guilt transform into defiance. You don't understand how lonely I've felt, she said, her voice rising in desperation. You're always working late. You're never around. I just wanted to feel something again. Her words struck me like a slap, igniting a fresh wave of anger. Lonely, I spat back. You think that gives you a right to betray me? To throw everything we built away for a fling with some guy who serves food? You could have talked to me, Mia. You could have told me how you felt. I tried, she shouted, her frustration boiling over. But you never listened. You were always too wrapped up in your job, too busy to notice that I was struggling. I shook my head in disbelief. So your solution was to go to Jake, to throw away our marriage. You think that's fair? Her shoulders slumped as she realized the gravity of her choices. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I never wanted to hurt you. I don't know what I was thinking. The sincerity in her eyes should have softened my heart, but instead it only fueled the fire within me. I had always been the one to forgive, the one to give second chances, but this time felt different. This was a betrayal that cut deeper than any other wound I had ever known. Sorry doesn't fix this, Mia, I said, my voice steady, even as my heart raced. You've shattered my trust, and I don't know if I can ever get it back. Mia's expression shifted from desperation to a mix of anger and regret. What do you want from me? She demanded, her voice rising once more. I can't change what happened. Are you really? To throw away everything we've built over one mistake? Her words stung, and I felt the weight of our history pressing down on me. But all I could think about was the betrayal, the way she had so easily turned her back on our vows. You made your choice, I replied, my tone cold. And now I have to make mine. What does that mean? She asked, a tremor of fear creeping into her voice. It means I won't be a part of this anymore, I said firmly. I can't stay in a marriage built on lies. I need to think about what's best for me now. Mia's expression shifted to one of panic, and I could see the realization dawning on her. You can't just walk away. We can fix this. We can go to therapy. We can talk. I interrupted, incredulous. What's there to talk about? You've already made your choice, and it wasn't me. You've chosen Jake over our life together. I could see the tears streaming down her face, but I felt no sympathy. The pain in my chest was too raw, too consuming. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but instead I turned and walked toward the door. The space between us felt like a chasm, and I knew I couldn't bridge it anymore. Mia, I said, pausing for a moment, I hope you realize what you've lost. With that, I stepped outside, leaving her standing in the doorway, a broken figure amidst the remnants of our shattered dreams. The air was cool against my skin, but inside I was boiling with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. I felt like a puppet whose strings had been severed, free yet unsure of where to go. As I walked away from the house we had shared, I could feel the weight of my decision settling in. I wasn't just leaving, I was taking back control of my life. I was done being the victim of her choices. The betrayal would not define me. But as I drove away, a new thought began to take shape in my mind. If she thought she could get away with this, she was sorely mistaken. I would make sure she understood the consequences of her actions. I could feel a dark resolve forming within me, a plan beginning to take shape. I would not let her continue to live her high-class lifestyle while I suffered. The days that followed my confrontation with Mia were a blur of emotions. I was caught in a whirlwind of pain and anger, a storm that raged within me. I had left our home, but I couldn't escape the memories that haunted me. Every place I visited, Every moment I spent alone reminded me of her betrayal. Yet, amidst the chaos, a new clarity began to emerge. I realized I had a choice to make, not just about my future, but about how I would respond to the betrayal that had shattered my life. I spent hours contemplating my next move. At first, I tried to drown my sorrows in work, throwing myself into projects to distract myself from the gnawing pain that had become my constant companion. But the more I worked, the more I felt the anger simmering beneath the surface. I was tired of feeling powerless, tired of being the one who was wronged. One evening, as I sat in my small apartment surrounded by the echoes of my past life, I opened my laptop and began to type. I had a plan. It started with the realization that Mia had always taken pride in her high-class lifestyle. She loved the finer things in life, the expensive dinners, the designer clothes, the lavish vacations. I would take that away from her. It was time for her to face the consequences of her actions. I began by gathering information. I reached out to a few friends who had connections in the catering business. I knew that Jake was not just a caterer. He was an ambitious entrepreneur who had dreams of expanding his business. I wanted to find a way to make sure that his reputation was tarnished and that he felt the repercussions of his affair with Mia. As I dug deeper, I learned about the upcoming events Jake was involved in: weddings, corporate parties, and charity galas. I started to formulate a plan that would not only ruin his reputation, but also expose the affair publicly. The thought of ruining the life they had built together filled me with a dark satisfaction. I spent sleepless nights plotting the details. I created fake accounts on social media, crafting elaborate stories that would make their affair public knowledge. I considered sending anonymous tips to various event planners and venues, detailing Jake's unprofessional conduct and his personal life. I reveled in the idea of Mia's face when the truth came crashing down around her. But it wasn't just about revenge on Jake. I wanted Mia to feel the weight of her choices. I imagined her being forced to sell her designer clothes, to trade in her high-end lifestyle for something far less glamorous. I wanted her to experience the loneliness she had inflicted on me. As I plotted and planned, I began to feel a sense of empowerment. I was no longer the victim. I was taking control of my life. I could see the path ahead of me, and it felt exhilarating. I knew that what I was planning wasn't just revenge. It was a way for me to reclaim my dignity and self-worth. But with the excitement of revenge came the nagging voice of morality. I wrestled with the implications of my actions. Was I really willing to go this far? Would it make me feel better in the end, or would it simply lead to more pain? I could hear the echoes of my friends telling me to let it go, to rise above the situation. But the thought of Mia continuing her high-class lifestyle while I wallowed in despair felt unbearable. I spent hours contemplating the moral implications of my plan. I knew I was crossing a line, but the pain of betrayal clouded my judgment. I found myself rationalizing my actions, convincing myself that this was the only way to make her understand the depth of her betrayal. I was angry, and anger has a way of justifying even the darkest of thoughts. At night I would lie awake, replaying the moments of our life together. The laughter, the love, the promises, now all tainted by her infidelity. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices, to understand that actions have consequences. The more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that this was the only way to reclaim my power. With each passing day, my resolve strengthened. I would execute my plan, and I would do it with precision. I felt like a chess player, carefully plotting my moves, anticipating the reactions of those involved. I was ready to unleash my revenge, and I knew that once I did, there would be no turning back. As I prepared for the first step of my plan, I felt a strange mix of excitement and dread. I was about to embark on a path that would change everything. The thought of Mia's face when she realized what I was doing filled me with a dark sense of satisfaction. I was ready to make her pay for her betrayal, and I would do it in a way that would leave a lasting impression. The first step of my plan was deceptively simple, yet it felt like I was standing at the precipice of a cliff, ready to leap into the unknown. I had spent days meticulously crafting the details, and now it was time to put my scheme into action. The thrill of revenge coursed through my veins, a heady mix of anger and satisfaction that pushed me to move forward. I created a fake social media account, complete with a fabricated persona that seemed credible enough to blend into the digital landscape. I named myself Sarah Thompson, a supposed wedding planner who had heard whispers about Jake's unprofessional behavior. With each post I crafted, I felt a surge of power. I spoke of his affair with Mia, dropping hints that would lead unsuspecting readers to question his integrity. I crafted stories that painted him as unreliable, a man whose personal life was as messy as the events he catered. As I posted, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I watched as the likes and comments began to roll in. For every supportive comment about my warnings, I felt a sense of vindication. I was no longer the victim. I was taking control of the narrative. I could almost hear the whispers of gossip swirling around Jake, and the thought of it made my heart race. The next phase involved Mia. I knew that to truly make her feel the weight of her choices, I had to bring the fallout home. I started by sending anonymous tips to various event planners and venues, detailing Jake's personal life and the affair he was having with a married woman. I made sure to emphasize how this could impact their business, how they wouldn't want to be associated with someone who had such a scandalous reputation. As the days passed, I watched as the consequences of my actions began to unfold. Jake's name was suddenly being mentioned in hushed conversations, and I could see the cracks forming in his carefully constructed facade. The caterer who had once been praised for his culinary skills was now facing scrutiny. I took satisfaction in knowing that I was the architect of his downfall. But it didn't stop there. I began to dig deeper into Jake's business, uncovering inconsistencies and potential legal issues that I could exploit. I reached out to a few contacts I had in the local media, planting seeds of doubt about his business practices. The more I learned, the more I realized that this man's empire was built on shaky ground, and I was determined to bring it crashing down. Meanwhile, I made sure to keep Mia in the dark about my actions. I wanted her to continue living her life, blissfully unaware of the storm that was brewing around her. I imagined her attending events, mingling with friends, all the while Jake's reputation was being dismantled piece by piece. I wanted her to experience the shock when everything came crashing down, and I was relishing the thought. As I executed my plan, I felt a sense of empowerment that I hadn't experienced in a long time. The pain of betrayal was still there, but it was overshadowed by the thrill of revenge. I found myself smiling more, engaging in conversations with friends, and even going out on dates, something I hadn't done since the affair came to light. I was reclaiming my life, one calculated move at a time. But with each passing day, a flicker of doubt began to creep into my mind. Was I becoming as ruthless as Mia? Was I losing sight of who I was in my quest for revenge? I wrestled with these thoughts, but each time I did, I reminded myself of the betrayal. I reminded myself of the pain she had caused and how she had shattered my trust. I justified my actions as a way of regaining control over my life, of making sure that she felt the consequences of her choices. One evening, as I sat in my apartment, the glow of my laptop illuminating my face, I stumbled across a news article about a wedding event that Jake was supposed to cater. It had been canceled due to the mounting rumors surrounding him. A wave of satisfaction washed over me. I could see the chaos I had sown in his life, and it felt good. I envisioned Mia's face when she heard about the fallout, the shock and disbelief that would wash over her. But just as quickly as the satisfaction came, a pang of guilt followed. I had set this in motion, and I was fully aware of the consequences. I was playing with lives, and while I justified it as revenge, I couldn't help but wonder what kind of person I was becoming. The lines between right and wrong began to blur, and I found myself questioning my motivations. Still, I pushed those doubts aside. I was determined to see this through to the end. I wanted Mia to understand the impact of her betrayal, to feel the weight of her decisions. I was prepared to sacrifice my own morals if it meant bringing her to her knees. As I finalized the details of my plan, I felt a sense of anticipation building within me. I was on the verge of unleashing a storm, and I was ready to watch the fallout unfold. I was no longer just a victim. I was the architect of my own destiny, and I was going to make sure Mia understood the consequences of her actions. The moment of reckoning arrived sooner than I had anticipated. I had been watching the fallout of my actions unfold like a slow-motion train wreck, and there was a part of me that relished the chaos. Jake's reputation was in tatters, and the whispers about his affair with Mia had spread like wildfire. I had executed my plan with precision, and now I was ready to witness the consequences. It was a Friday evening when I received a call from a mutual friend of Mia and mine, Sarah. Her voice was tinged with urgency as she spoke. "Hey, have you heard about Jake? The wedding he was supposed to cater just got canceled and people are starting to talk about him. They're saying he's been unprofessional and that there's something going on with a married woman." A wave of satisfaction washed over me, but I quickly masked it with concern. "Really? I hadn't heard," I replied, feigning innocence. "That's terrible for him. I hope it's not too serious." "Oh, it's serious," Sarah continued, oblivious to the smirk creeping onto my face. "Mia been caught up in it too. People are putting two and two together. I think she's going to be in for a rough ride." I could hardly contain my excitement. This was everything I had wanted. I imagined Mia's shock when she realized that her affair was no longer a secret, that her high-class lifestyle was about to come crashing down around her. The thought filled me with a dark sense of satisfaction, but I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that I was crossing a line. That evening, I decided to visit a bar I used to frequent, hoping to blend in and hear the gossip firsthand. As I sipped my drink, I overheard snippets of conversation about Jake and Mia. "Did you hear? They say he's been cheating with some woman," one patron said, while another chimed in. "I can't believe Mia would do that. She seemed so happy." The words pierced through me, and I felt a strange mix of vindication and guilt. I had orchestrated this chaos, and I was proud of it, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I was becoming someone I didn't recognize. Was this really who I wanted to be? The next day, I received a text from Mia. It was brief and to the point. "We need to talk." My heart raced at the thought of seeing her again, knowing that she was about to face the consequences of her actions. I felt a rush of adrenaline as I replied, "Okay, where do you want to meet?" We agreed to meet at a cafe, a neutral ground where we had shared countless cups of coffee and laughter. As I walked in, I could see her sitting at a corner table, her face pale and drawn. The vibrant woman I had once known was gone, replaced by someone who looked lost and vulnerable. "Mia," I said as I approached her, "you look different." "Thanks," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I guess I'm just dealing with everything." I took a seat across from her, studying her face. There were dark circles under her eyes, and I could see the stress etched into her features. "I heard about Jake," I said, my voice calm. "Things aren't going so well for him, are they?" Mia's expression shifted from vulnerability to anger in an instant. "You know what's happening, don't you? You've been behind this all along." The accusation hung in the air, and I felt a rush of adrenaline at being exposed. "I've done nothing but watch the truth unfold," I replied, my heart racing. "You made your choices, Mia. You were the one who decided to betray me and our marriage." Her eyes filled with tears, and I saw the pain I had caused reflected back at me. "I never wanted it to go this far. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. But you didn't have to do this." "Didn't have to?" I echoed, anger bubbling to the surface. "You think I had a choice? You think I wanted to be the one left in the dust while you lived your high-class life? I wanted you to understand what you did to me." "I do understand," she cried, her voice breaking. "But ruining Jake's life isn't going to fix ours. It won't change what happened between us." I felt the walls closing in around me as her words penetrated my anger. "You're right," I admitted, my voice quieter now. "But it's too late. You made your choice, and now you have to live with the consequences." Mia stared at me, her expression a mix of disbelief and despair. "I lost everything, and it's all because of my mistake. I never meant to hurt you. Please, can't we just start over?" "Start over," I repeated, the bitterness in my voice evident. "You shattered my trust, Mia. I don't think you understand how deep that cut." "I do understand," she insisted, her voice trembling. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. I love you and I hate what I did. Please give me a chance to prove it. But her words felt empty, as if she were grasping at straws in a desperate attempt to salvage what was left of our marriage. I could see the pain in her eyes, but I also saw the remnants of the woman who had betrayed me. I didn't want to be the villain in her story, but I couldn't let her walk away with no consequences. I can't do this, Mia, I said, shaking my head. I need to take care of myself now. I'm done being the one who gets hurt. As I stood to leave, I could feel a weight lift from my shoulders. I had finally taken control of my life, but it came at a cost. I watched as she sat there, tears streaming down her face, a broken woman facing the consequences of her actions. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow, knowing that I had played a part in her downfall. Walking away from the cafe, I felt a sense of finality wash over me. I had executed my plan, and while I had achieved my revenge, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still grappling with my own demons. I had taken control, but at what cost? The road ahead felt uncertain, but I knew one thing. I was ready to move on. As I walked away from the cafe, I felt a whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. The confrontation with Mia had been intense, and now I was left with a profound sense of emptiness. I had executed my plan for revenge, and while it had brought me a fleeting sense of satisfaction, it also left behind a bitter taste. I had become the architect of destruction, and I was beginning to question if it had all been worth it. In the days that followed, I kept my distance from Mia. I avoided our mutual friends and the places we used to frequent. I needed space to process everything that had happened. The thrill of revenge had faded, replaced by a creeping loneliness. I found myself reflecting on the life we had shared, the laughter, the dreams, and the love that had once seemed so vibrant. Now, all of that felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by betrayal and heartache. I spent my evenings at home, contemplating my next steps. I had taken control of my life, but the question remained: what was I going to do with it? The satisfaction I had felt when I orchestrated the downfall of Jake and the unraveling of Mia's lifestyle had diminished. I realized that I didn't want to become a bitter person fueled by revenge. I wanted to heal and move forward. One evening, I decided to clear out some of the remnants of my past. I rummaged through boxes filled with mementos from our life together, photos, gifts, and reminders of happier times. I found myself pausing at a picture from our wedding day. We looked so blissful, so in love, and I felt a pang of sadness wash over me. How had we gone from that to this? I took a deep breath and resolved to let go of the anger that had consumed me. I wanted to reclaim my life, not just for Mia, but for myself. I began to focus on self-improvement. I enrolled in a cooking class, something I had always wanted to do but never found the time for. I started exercising regularly, finding solace in the rhythm of my heart pounding as I pushed my body. Slowly, I was rediscovering who I was beyond the confines of my marriage. As the weeks turned into months, I began to heal. I reached out to friends I hadn't spoken to in a while, reconnecting with those who had supported me before Mia had come into my life. I found solace in their company, and their laughter reminded me that life could still be enjoyable. I even started dating again, cautiously opening my heart to the possibility of love, though I remained guarded. Mia, on the other hand, was struggling. I learned from friends that she had tried to salvage her reputation, but the damage had been done. The whispers about her affair lingered like a shadow, and she had lost the connections that had once defined her high-class lifestyle. I felt a twinge of guilt, knowing that I had played a role in her downfall, but I also understood that she had made her choices. One day, I received a text from Mia. It was unexpected and simple. "Can we talk?" My heart raced at the thought of seeing her again. Part of me was apprehensive. I didn't know if I was ready to face the woman who had broken my heart. But another part of me was curious about what she had to say. We agreed to meet at a park, a neutral place where we could talk without the weight of our past hanging over us. As I arrived, I spotted her sitting on a bench, her posture slightly slumped, looking smaller than I remembered. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever conversation lay ahead. "Mia," I said as I approached, my voice steady but cautious. "Hey," she replied, her eyes meeting mine with a mix of vulnerability and regret. "Thanks for meeting me." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. "I wanted to apologize," she finally said, her voice trembling. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since everything happened. I know I hurt you, and I'm so sorry for what I did. I was selfish, and I never meant for it to get so out of hand." I looked at her, searching for sincerity in her eyes. "You made a choice, Mia. You knew what you were doing." "I know," she replied, tears glistening in her eyes. "And I've been paying for it ever since. I lost everything, my friends, my lifestyle, and most importantly, I lost you. I realize now how much I took for granted." I felt a rush of emotions. The anger that had fueled my revenge had faded, replaced by a sense of understanding. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice softer now. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said, her voice breaking. "But I hope that one day you can find it in your heart to understand. I've learned so much from this experience, and I don't want to be that person anymore." I nodded, absorbing her words. "I've had to learn a lot too, Mia. I had to find a way to move on. Revenge didn't bring me peace, it only fed my anger. I realized I needed to focus on my own healing." We sat in silence again, the weight of our shared history settling over us. I could see that she had changed in some ways, but the scars of our past remained. "I hope you find happiness, Mia," I said finally. "We both deserve that." "Thank you," she whispered, her voice heavy with emotion. "I hope you find it too." As we parted ways that day, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. The anger that had consumed me for so long was finally dissipating. I had taken control of my life, and while the scars of betrayal would always remain, I was determined to move forward. I walked away from the park with a renewed sense of purpose. I had learned that revenge might provide a fleeting satisfaction, but true healing came from letting go. I was ready to embrace the future, to open my heart to new possibilities, and to reclaim the life I had once thought was lost. In the end, I realized that while betrayal had changed me, it had also set me free. I was no longer defined by my past. I was ready to write my own story. With that thought in mind, I stepped into the sunlight, ready to face whatever came next. The journey was far from over, but I was finally ready to embrace it.